Good day, everyone. Today we are going to tackle about the story of Shakespeare's Macbeth, Part 1. But first, we need to know the author first. William Shakespeare was an English playwright, poet, and actor, widely regarded as the greatest writer in the English language, and the world's greatest dramatist. He probably wrote Macbeth in 1606 at the request of King James I, and the play may have been intended to honor the King of Denmark who paid a visit to England in the summer of that year. Shakespeare used two stories from a popular history text, Holinshed's Chronicles, as the basis for Macbeth. One of the stories is about Macbeth, a Scottish king with a bloodthirsty reputation. The other deals with the murder of King Duff by Dunwald, who was encouraged by an ambitious wife. In addition, Shakespeare included the legend that witches once appeared to a Scottish king and predicted his future. Perhaps the only piece of historical truth in Shakespeare's Macbeth, however, is the fact that Macbeth actually killed King Duncan.
And now that you know who's the author, let's get on with the story. Macbeth is one of the greatest of the tragedies, swift as night and dark as spilled blood, with death and battle and witchcraft bound together in wonderful poetry to tell the story of a man, Macbeth, and a woman, Lady Macbeth, who wanted the throne of Scotland, and they took it. But the act forced them into a murderous world of sleepless torment, always struggling to find safety and always sinking deeper in their own terror. The story begins after Macbeth and Banquo defeated the Norwegian king in Scotland. After the battle, the generals headed to meet with their king, King Duncan of Scotland. In thunder and lightning, not far from the place of battle, three witches meet on a lonely heath. They plan to meet again at twilight to speak to Macbeth as he returns from the fighting, and they vanish into the storm. Fair is foul, and foul is fair, hover through the fog and filthy air, which means good is bad, and bad is good.
Macbeth and Banquo on their journey crossed a field and met the three witches from earlier. The witches proclaimed Macbeth as the chieftain of Glamis, Cawdor, and the future king of Scotland. Then they tell Banquo that he'll be the father of future kings. Macbeth riddles them with questions and protested that it is impossible that he should ever become chieftain of Cawdor, as the chieftain of Cawdor is still alive. But they refuse to divulge anymore and vanishes into thin air.
Macbeth and Banquo continue their walk while discussing their prophecies. After a while, they stumble upon two fellow Scottish nobles, one of them thanking Macbeth for his service in war, while the other one told Macbeth that the King of Scotland promoted him to be a chieftain of Cawdor. The noble explained that the former chieftain was a traitor, although he is still alive. The King of Scotland will have him executed tomorrow. For a moment, an imagine of evil comes to horrible imagines of one way in which he can fulfill the prophecies and become king, and then he puts the whole thing away from him.
Banquo goes on to warn Macbeth that the prophecy could be a trick to tempt into criminal behavior. Macbeth sends a letter to his wife, Lady Macbeth, explaining the astounding prophecy. Lady Macbeth is the granddaughter of a different king of Scotland. The current king of Scotland is the son of the king that murdered Lady Macbeth's grandfather. Even worse, her brother was murdered in this power struggle. Because of this, Lady Macbeth privately welcomes King Duncan's downfall.
The scene changes at Macbeth's castle, where a messenger arrives and informs Macbeth that King Duncan will spend the night in their castle. After hearing this, Lady Macbeth wants to kill Duncan then. Macbeth doesn't feel good about killing his king, yet Lady Macbeth eggs him on by asking Macbeth if he's a coward. With bitter words, she eggs Macbeth on to murder, and with cunning words, she showed him how to do it.
After dinner, King Duncan goes to bed. Outside his chamber are two of his guards. Lady Macbeth gets them drunk and they fall asleep. Then, she goes into King Duncan's room, but his face reminds her of her own father and she can't do it. Her husband Macbeth came later and found the daggers laying by the guards. Shortly after, he came to his wife with bloodied hands, implying he killed King Duncan. She tells him to wash his hands and then cannot understand why he didn't leave the daggers by the guards, so Lady Macbeth takes them back herself.
The next morning, there's a loud banging on Macbeth's door. It was the knocking of Macduff, the chieftain of Fife. Macbeth answered the door, and they both went to the king's bedroom to wake him up. Macduff walks in, and the body of the dead king stuns him. Macbeth pretends to be just as surprised, then Macbeth kills the two guards before they can even proclaim their innocence.
Fearing Kusparaki, King Duncan's sons flee. One of them goes to Ireland and the other goes to England. In their absence, Macbeth crowned the king at the city of Scone. Besides being king, Macbeth is even more troubled. Now he's worrying about the prophesies of Banquo, whose sons are to rule Scotland. Macbeth sets out to have Banquo and his son murdered and hires two assassins. The assassins try to kill the targets, but Valance escapes while his father is killed.
Meanwhile, the new king and queen are entertaining their guests at the castle. Mysteriously, Banquo ghost flies in, and only Macbeth can see it. When the ghost finally leaves, Macbeth raises a toast, saying, "To our dear friend Banquo, whom we miss."
While Macbeth is drinking the toast, Banquo's ghost flies in again. Macbeth gets angry at the ghost, which no one else can see. Before his bewildered guests, Macbeth speaks to the man he killed. "Thou cannot say I did it." His wife reminds him in a fierce whisper of the dagger he once saw, which he also thought to be real. But nothing can unfix his desperate attention until the ghost vanishes, and even then he cannot shake his thoughts loose again.